Raymond Hagen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice for being invited. Thank you.
It's a great honor having you here. You're like, you're one of the guys that I've like always wanted to have on the podcast, but I wasn't really sure the angle to use to get you on. So the angle I chose was just to like stalk you on LinkedIn. And then one day, finally, you just to help me and just like, hey, by the way, do you want me to be on the podcast or why do you keep stalking me? So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is, what should I say? LinkedIn is maybe one of the few sane social media out there still, and it serves a purpose. And I've gotten this pro version, so when people stalk me, then I see it, and yeah, it does. I doesn't mind. You can say.
Yeah,
so that's okay.
Worked out great for me at least.
Yeah,
But
that's good.
speaking of LinkedIn, while I was talking to you, you have so right now you have like 4 current positions. And I guess you can come back to that is you don't work for, or maybe you do work for 4 different places. And then you have 15 different previous experiences. So instead of me going through all of them, like what do you, who is Raymond Hagen?
You can say that security is my trade and my passion, and it has been that for 20 years. I was very keen on security without actually knowing what that was 20 years ago, you can say. But I went to Tromsø, studied cryptography. Then I went back to Molde, finished my master's. I started a small company with some friends of mine. So we gave that up after a while, and then I moved to Brønnøysund. Started working as a security advisor there at the IT department. Then I started working as the chief security officer for Altinn, which I was in 15 years until March of last year. Then I needed a little change of pace and scenery, so I'm still with the Norwegian Digitalization Agency, but now I'm doing a so-called public PhD at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU, and I research prediction of advanced persistent threats. And also I have a what's it called, one-man company just to do some things if I want to, but I have some other things to take my time, so you can say that is the essence of things. You can say.
A very busy man, and always been a busy man, it sounds like.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I guess that sums it up. Yeah.
The sensibility of the data that's in Altinn, does that have anything to do, and your work at Digdir, does that have anything to do with the fact that you started researching APTs?
No.
Or what made you want to do that?
You can say that it started in 2016. I got introduced. I had some talks with different security companies like yourself, mnemonic and so on, and I got introduced to these companies that was trying to protect against APTs, and they kind of intrigued me. And maybe one of the things that kind of intrigued me the most was that it came a very hard suggestion, and that was that either you have been attacked by some kind of APT or you will be. That was kind of a assumption that was made from the industry in 2016. And of course, this is very difficult to both apprehend, and it's difficult to accept, at least for management point of view, because like, are you saying that okay, our systems aren't good enough? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, and of course, no one wants to hear. No one wants to hear that. But from there, this interest grow because it's very intriguing to try and understand an adversary that you have to accept is smarter, is better equipped, have more time, have more resources than yourself. Because it's quite humbling, actually. Because like, okay, I can buy all the software in the world. I can buy anything. I can do whatever I want. I can have all these type of things, but I have to accept there is still someone out there who is at least one step ahead of me. And of course, over time, this inspiration have, of course, developed, and for me, being able to see if it's possible to predict where they're going to strike, what they're wanting to do, that is very interesting. And that is the essence behind my chosen topic of research for my PhD about prediction of APTs. You can say, yeah.
And I know you're not like done yet, but like what do you call it?
What's
the working title?
The working title is Prediction of Advanced Persistent Threats within the boundaries of an incident response environment. Because what my hypothesis is that you can say in Norway, except for Telenor and Equinor, all companies in Norway are, by international standards, SMEs. You can say they are small and medium sized. Yes. And if you are going to, of course, this is a big part of mnemonic's, you can say, business model. You provide outsourcing of, let's say, monitoring, outsourcing of you're using these tools. But if every single company should have all the tools and bells and whistles needed to understand that you have an APT roaming around your networks, that will probably cost $1 million. That's just getting the bells and whistles inside. But you also need people who have the skill and the will to actually use and understand these tools. So what I am trying to figure out is that you have the formal data, the technical data, data traffic, malware, all these type of things that are very reactive in its analysis. You can study this, and a lot of security tools, they're using these type of tools to understand that here are a threat actor doing their thing. But what I also believe is that you have informal data. That can be newspapers, that can be blogs, that can be social media, etc. These type of data. That looking at that mix, you can also understand that some kind of threat actors will use this opportunity to attack you, you can say. So if I can say that if my prediction models are correct, and if I manage to get a result, I might be able to say that, okay, it's plausible that this sector will be attacked by an actor because we are seeing this and this and this in the realm of intelligence, what you can call it. So that is the general idea.
Interesting. And you could also probably predict how they're going to do these things as well, or is that not a part of your?
A big question. I'm uncertain because you have to have some conditions. You can say that what I'm working on now is that I have 14 different types of data, like I mentioned, which I have identified. And in those data, I try to extract indicators of compromise. So, for instance, if we talk about cognitive warfare, for instance, you can say, today you have, for instance, you have if you look at social media, you have especially 3 very polarizing types of events. You can say you have the Ukraine war, of course, you have the Middle Eastern conflict, you have environmental cause, you can say. These are 3 very, these are 3 causes which very few people try to understand, in my opinion, all aspects of. They choose one side or another side. And what I also see is that some state actors, they take advantage of this. They know that, okay, this is something, these 3 topics, they are something that people are very vocal about. They have very strong opinions about this. It doesn't matter what opinion you have, but you have a very strong opinion about it. And then they can use X or TikTok or whatever, and they make troll factories, and they flood with untrue data, you can say. Microsoft had even called them by the name advanced persistent manipulators. You can say they have made a assumption about this, and it actually have begun coming some research about this. And of course, why are they doing this? Because if you have a skilled knowledge about what to look for, you quickly understand this is let's say a Russian troll factory who are just spamming. So why are they doing this when it's so easy to understand that they are doing it? Probably because it's a smoke and mirror, a smoke screen for different type of tactical attacks. Because like 10 years ago, you saw denial of service attacks being done. And very often when denial of service attacks are being done is that they masked other malicious data like intrusions. They masked that with volumes of more or less harmful denial of service attacks. So when people were happy, oh, we are up and running again after the denial of service attack, they had gained a foothold inside the system. That's what they did. Now they are flooding social media with lots of false news and manipulation, you can say. And then in the same time, they also commit wipers or ransomware attacks or other types of attack towards critical infrastructure, for example. So you can say that they use, it's a very skilled process from the adversaries because they're using not only you can say the social media or other types of news platforms or similar to raise polarization in a society. They are also using it to mask advanced attacks, technical. So you can't look at only one of the data sources by itself. You have to look at a combination of these to see. And what I hope is that if I manage to make a prototype or a schema or something like that, which looks at these 14 data types I have assumed, then I might be able to point at the sector, giving it some kind of scoring, something like that. So I'm looking at different AI models to consume the data, either diffusion models or conventional GANs or something like that to use.
Very interesting. And what you're describing there, that's called like a false flag operation, is it not?
The advanced, you can see the advanced persistent manipulators attacks, like when, for instance, you saw in the early days after, one example that has been in the media was that early days after the 7th October terrorism attack in Israel, you saw that it was a lot of social media polarization articles made targeting specific parts of Muslim communities in France. And this, and it's quite cynical, but when very good, the French news agency, they were very good at picking up this. And what they understood very fast was that when they looked at who was publishing this was from false newspapers which originated in Russia. So you had a Russian propagandist trying to make a horrible incident polarized by targeting special, very, what should we say, vulnerable communities in the southern France, Muslim youth primarily, to become, to kind of promote their cause, you can say. And you see a lot of these type of things.
What does that have to do with like APTs?
Yeah, you can say that the APT isn't a single person or a single entity. what I have defined it in my research is that there are a group which have a vast amount of resources available, both technical and money, you can say, and they also have a lot of time, and they are task oriented. And in most circumstances, they are either related to a nation state through intelligence agency, or in some instances, they are related to organized crime. So they are not entities that you can say the boiler room hackers from the 1980s, where a group of kids are sitting in their room doing some mischief. You have maybe Anonymous or some groups like that you can argue are, at least in volume, some kind of APT, but I would more consider them rather rudimentary hacktivists, you can say. Yeah.
What other teams in an APT are there besides like is there more than like I'm not sure, I've never like researched an APT, but do they have like different departments that do different things? Obviously that makes sense, but have you ever looked at that?
Yeah, you can say that undoubtedly. Of course, you have the most famous APT is maybe APT 29, Fancy Bear, which have been around for several years, and they did they have done several very large hacks like dark energy in Ukraine, the Viper. They have done they've done a lot of bad things, but they of course aren't one group. They have several subgroups, and you look and you can see that from the amount of places where they are. I would more consider them, let you say, a section of a division in a public office. So you have, okay, this is the office of APT 29, and you have subsections, OT systems, you have APMs, you have industrial espionage, you have ransomware, etc. What I have read, of course, this is information that never has been verified, of course, naturally, but the Quibbillion group is what is estimated to be the US APT, you can say, the state-owned APT. And US have a little different way of talking about this, because they consider their cyber offensive capabilities more like any other military capabilities. So they are more open with it. But what has been claimed is that, at least a couple of years ago, it has been claimed that the Quibbillion group have about 70 under subgroups, you can say.
70, wow.
70. So, but of course, that can be 170 now. We don't know. But you can say that, okay, of course, one of the problems with doing a PhD about this is that you can always assume. You can never guarantee. It's very difficult.
Hard to interview people and get the real answer.
It's very few APT groups that voluntarily will say that they are. But like, you probably have good insight into Stuxnet. Yeah, and that, in my opinion, from an engineering point of view, that is maybe the best software ever made, because it's so extremely complex. And one of the claims about this is that because it is so complex, because it's probably required intimate knowledge of both Windows, Microsoft Windows system on a very, very low level, it also required extreme low-level knowledge about Siemens SCADA systems. It's very difficult, and they estimate that the cost of making the software be a range of $10 million, something like that. So they don't estimate that no one else than a government-backed financial entity could make this kind of software. But of course, you don't use these hardcore programmers who are able to make this software. You don't send them out sending spam mail. You can say. No. so like, it kind of makes sense that you have these compartmentalized environments within an APT environment. So for the sake of the news and the ability to communicate this, yeah, you can say it is probably likely that it's a part of some country's intelligence agency who made this, and it's probably one of these countries, but they can't say that, okay, if it was the US who made it, it was probably the Equilibrium Group, but if that's related to NSA, CIA, or FBI, you just don't know, you can say, as the same way as when they did the Moonlight Maze in 2010, which was the first real APT attack originating in Russia just after the Soviet Union fell apart. They understood that it was Russia, but even the Russian internal ministry, they wasn't aware that the intelligence agency were doing this at the same time. So they invited the Americans over to Russia to have an investigation. So you have this. It's quite funny when you read about these old APTs, because you see that there are some kind of distance. Is that because the government itself wants to have plausible deniability, or is it because of some other reason? You just don't know. But it's clear that it's not always that government officials are being informed what some other government agency are doing also in the cyber realm. This has been talked about in movies and in books for centuries when it coming to, you can say, black ops and you can say more traditional spying and warfare, but it haven't been talked that much about when it comes to the cyber realm, because that's quite new. All these things that are happening in practice after 2010, you can say. Yeah.
Interesting. So the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing, because there's everything's a need to know basis, and then hopefully there's somebody that knows about everything. But it's very interesting.
I highly doubt so, actually. It seems, of course, maybe because
well, they're competing against each other, right? At least in the States, they're like the CIA, FBI, and I know in Russia they're also, it's a similar, not competing against each other, it's a wrong thing to say, but it's there's some internal politics. You don't tell everything to the other side.
And you also have another very interesting thing I figure out in some, or saw and documented in some articles I read, and that was there are, you can say, there are three large actors in this this geopolitical field. It's Russia, of course, which we talk a lot about. It is China, and it's USA. Those are the three largest ones. And of course, they are the three largest geopolitical players at the time. But what you saw was suddenly that you had a lot of attacks originating in the Far East that looked like, when you re-engineer the malware, they saw that it was written in Russian. It was written in languages like D, which are used a lot by malware authors, because they don't have signatures for, they have signatures for C and C#, but they don't have for D, you can say, and these sort of things. And but then they started to, is this really Russians who are doing this? And they did a author analysis. What they did was that they took older malware samples, and they made a profile, you can say, on how old malware samples was made. And then they compared it with this new one. And what they saw was that, this code is structured the exact same as this other sample, but wait, this sample is Chinese. So what they then assumed was that Chinese hackers, probably APTs, they used as a decoy a description and structure of the code as Russian to throw people to believe that this was a Russian attack.
Yeah.
So we also have, you can say, we have people that you assume are kind of friendly that are obviously not, but they are using a common enemy to decoy others. Yeah. So you can't necessarily believe everything by first glance, you can say. So even if you get a malware which are in Russian or in Chinese or in English, that doesn't mean it's US or Russian or Chinese.
Yeah.
It can be someone else.
I thought the ending was your story was going to be, we thought it was China. They wrote like Russians, but it was actually the U.S. That's but
Now
I guess that is the future, right? It's going to be really
Yeah.
hard to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is and yeah. So it's a lot of this type of cloak and daggers, and yeah.
That makes
It's
it really
very-
expensive for those that are doing the attacking to do those to use those sort of procedures. But at the end of the day, if you have plausible deniability, that's nice to have in those cases.
But of course you also but the problem, of course, is that this coincides with geopolitics.
We discussed something earlier called conflictual coexistence. Why don't you break that down for us? I'm surprised that I said it right in the first try. I'm not sure if it was right, but it sounded right. Explain that one for us.
Conflictual coexistence. I was at a conference a month ago, and it was the setting was geopolitics, and the setting was like how China and U.S. relation will develop in the future. And you can say that conflictual coexistence was what he was what he like said that this can be defined as. And you have a state where you have two entities where they are kind of mutually dependent on each other, but they still don't agree about anything. You can say. So you have this. So on the one hand, one party or the other party can't just back away and say, I don't need you, and move away. That isn't possible. So you have to have the coexistence part. But on the other hand, because they might have they might have an interest either for themselves or to make an image towards others that I am the strongest one in this relationship, then they will try to make the other one look bad by different means. So what you will see in a so-called conflictual coexistence type relationship is that you will have a period of escalation, and where things are looking very bad, might even look like it can be a war, for instance, if it's entities of that sort. And then after you have had the escalation, you will have a de-escalation, and everyone believes that this will last forever. And then after a little while, you will have a new escalation, and it will go like this. And if you look at the relationship between US and China over the last years, it has been exactly that. You see that, okay, China sent up some spy balloons. That's, of course, US uses an escalation. They shoot them down. And Nancy Pelosi visits Taiwan. China believes that's an escalation. Then they suddenly meet and have a meet and greet, Xi and Biden. Then it's a de-escalation. Then it's something else. So it's very predictable. It's, of course, when I explain it like this, you kind of take the fun out of it, you can say. It's a little bit like when your parents are fighting, you can say. When you know that they always fight, when you know that they always are fighting in one pattern, it becomes boring after a while because it doesn't work, you can say. So it's the same thing with these countries. They do this thing that looks very bad and people get scared. Oh no, now they're friends again. Oh no, they won't. So that's the essence behind conflictual coexistence.
And does that mean anything for cyber?
Oh yeah. Because you have, you can say that in parts where you either expect escalation or you are in escalation, you will have an increased cyber espionage. You can have increased cyber warfare. You can have increased information warfare. And then, of course, it comes down to, like we talked about a little bit back, this with plausible deniability. You can say a large hacker attack from one state towards another state doesn't need to be, no one else than the intended party needs to know about it, you can say, unless they are saying it freely. So in that context, it becomes a little bit up to the different parties whether or not they want to use the information to escalate. You have a very nice example with this. I like stories, which you probably I like history. I don't know if you know about The Thing. Have you heard about that? The Thing?
That actually, I think I've heard about the movie, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
No, it's definitely not what I'm talking about. I think this was in early 1950s. They were in Moscow. The war was over. You have started the Cold War, but it was fairly peaceful between the US and the Soviets. And the Russian, the American ambassador to Soviet, he had a visit from some scouts, some Girl Scouts at the embassy in Moscow, and they did some fantastic Russian performances, and it was very nice, and this was appreciated by all parties. And the American ambassador, he was gifted with a very nice American eagle emblem, which he can put on his wall. It was made in sturdy oak tree.
Oh, I remember this now.
And it was placed as a gesture of good faith. It was placed in a meeting room. And after a while, it was discovered that the Soviets did have access to information that only could exist from within the American embassy. And they were wondering, how could that be? And they were looking for bugs and everything. And of course, in the end, they understood that it had to be something with this thing they got in present. And what they discovered was that inside this thing, it was a kind of like you say when you pull a guitar string, it resonates sound waves, kind of. And it was passive, so it didn't have any electrical motors, it didn't have anything. But outside, it stood a white van was standing outside the building, sending a note on a specific tone, and that tone resonated with the thing, so he could record everything that was said inside the building. Extremely
So cool.
smart, extremely smart gadget. The thing was that the thing was transported back to the US, and it was stored there. The Russians believed that it was still in the American embassy, but they don't mind. Then, a couple of years later, the US had a U-2 spy plane that was shot down over Russia. Of course, when a spy plane gets shot down, then you've probably seen this incident described in the Tom Hanks movie Bridge of Spies. After the pilot that was being shot down had been returned to the US after some negotiations and so on, the USSR made a formal complaint in the UN Security Council that the US was going over the line with spying. They were going far too far with their spying act. So they went up and were going to promote that, okay, here you see US are not complying with international rules. They are sending spy planes and doing this. Then, of course, the Americans, they took from the thing. So they took and brought forward this thing from the American embassy and showing that, look here, they have actually been spying for us for 10 years already, so they are not going to talk very loudly about this. And afterwards, it was kind of a conflictual coexistence between them. They just know that everybody knows that they spy on each other, and it wasn't talked about anymore. So they don't necessarily use the information about the other adversary that they have when it is discovered. They use it when it's necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Save the card and use it for later, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a fantastic story from geopolitics.
So last question for you. I know that we're going over time. Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're talking about building a model to do this predictions, right? And I always ask like a question about AI, but in the end of the podcast. Are you building like a model? I know it's not going to be AI, but it is a model. But you're building something like that. Can your model Yeah. What's the connection between your model and AI?
It's AI, you can say. The only way to, I believe, and my supervisors agree and so on, the only way to handle this amount of data that I predict I will need is using AI, because that's what AI is very good for.
Mm.
The problem, of course, is finding what type of model or make that makes more sense to use. What I have been looking into is different types of neural networks, machine learning, you can say. And there have been some developments lately that makes this a little bit maybe easier, but the essence of what I'm trying to is to, the best thing will be if it's possible to use a already available large language model like ChatGPT 3.5 or something like that, and since it's already pre-trained, and then see if I can fit it into my needs so that they can do the classification for me and these type of things. But one of the things that I have been wondering, because it isn't that much being done about this, is that GAN's generative adversarial networks, which is the main model between DALL-E and making pictures from text, you can say. What they do there is that they have a generator which generates the data, and you have a discriminator which generates noise, and then they fight until they are ready about you have a reasonable result. What I am wondering is that since I am trying to, since my main body of work until now has been to identify indicators of compromise in the different types of data I assume I need, can I use that as a discriminator against, let's say, the different type of data, and then make them look at it and then give it a score? So that is kind of the conceptual thought I have at this point in time. But of course, that can change over time.
Interesting.
Because I haven't seen it being done with. I haven't seen it being done with, you can say, classification models. I've seen it being done with, generating images and these type of things. So you have this, and you have a fairly new concept of diffusion models, which also can be applied, maybe. So I guess my work will be more and more getting in, more and more focusing on how to apply AI for the prediction. But of course, the thing is that for this type of security, I can apply an AI model, because like I've said in some instances, unfortunately, AI can't be used for any type of security task. You can use it where you still accept some kind of uncertainty, but you can't use it when you need predictability. Because when all comes down to everything, it's statistics. So if you have to be absolutely 100% sure that this gives a result, let's say malware analysis, you can't use anything based on statistics. You can use it on, let's say, spam mail, because if you get a spam mail, that isn't dangerous. And if you have a SCADA system and you don't understand that this is a malware, that's a problem, you can say. If you introduce a SCADA system and you introduce an AI model, and it defines that, okay, a new model is now a malware, the system stops working. So I guess that is also one of the major issues with AI. Maybe this is not something that you want to hear, but one of the problems is that, like, when me and other people are coming to companies asking for solutions to handle the new security products, you can say, it's nice that companies are presenting AI tools, but the problem is that from a user or the implementer's perspective, those who are the producers of AI tools are throwing all the domain knowledge and the risk over to the user. Because it's the domain user that needs to understand, can I actually, in my environment, what I am trying to protect, can I use this system? And I think maybe that is one of the most difficult things that security people will have in the future, understanding when can you use this and when can you not. And you didn't have this problem before AI, because if I went to mnemonic and said, I want an antiviral solution, yeah, this one has signatures and it's updated 10 times every day. Then I knew that had you the signature, you will get the one-to-one result. The problem is that when you throw in an AI-based solution, they can have learned that, okay, what I found last time, I don't find this time. And you have to accept, do I accept that uncertainty? If the answer is yes, go ahead. If the answer is no, I can't use it.
Interesting.
So yeah, there are AI requires a lot of things of the user.
Yeah. Well, I have two comments there. Number one being, if you actually build that model, you're going to have a lot of interested parties wanting to apply that. And number two, you must be right next to Inga, right? Maskiner som tänker. Or didn't she work for NTNU?
I have read it and I have met her, yes. Yeah.
Explainable AI. That is, once you can figure that one out, you're invited back on for the next episode.
Yeah, I'm actually going in January to Tromsø to a course in deep neural networks.
Gonna be fun.
What? Yeah,
and
cold. I think so.
Yeah,
I know.
Well, Mr. Hagen, thank you so much for your time with us here today. Conflictual Coexistence.
Thank you very much.
I'm looking very much forward to seeing how much longer do you have in your PhD? Is that a thing? You have like a time period, right?
I have a time period. It's estimated June 2026. So I'm halfway there approximately. Yeah, something.
Cool. Well, that's good. Then next time I stalk on your LinkedIn profile, then you know what I'm going to be asking for. Mr. Hagen, thank you so much for your time today, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's. And we will see you and talk to you on the next side of the New Year.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me, and have a good New Year and Merry Christmas when that time arrives.
Thank you very much. Ciao.